Good evening, everybody. I would like to call our February 25th, 2025 Planning Commission regular meeting to order. Lovely to see a full house this evening. The Planning Commission is holding hybrid meetings. Members of the public can attend the meeting in person or observe the meeting on Zoom online by visiting www.cityofarcata.org and following the live meetings link at the bottom of the city's homepage or on the city's YouTube channel. If you are attending remotely, please be aware that the Zoom feed provides the closest to real-time stream. If you rely on the other feeds and you wish to make comments, please be aware of the time lag on those feeds. The first item on our agenda is the land acknowledgement. The City of Arcata acknowledges that the lands we are located on are the unceded ancestral lands of the Wiyot tribe. The land that Arcata rests on is known in the Wiyot language as Gudene, meaning over in the woods or among the redwoods. Past actions by local, state, and federal governments removed the Wiyot and other indigenous peoples from the land and threatened to destroy their cultural practices. The City of Arcata acknowledges the Wiyot community, their elders both past and present, as well as future generations. This acknowledgement seeks to aid in dismantling the legacy narratives of settler colonialism. Staff, will you please call roll?
Yeah, Commissioner Ham.
Present.
Commissioner Hickey.
Present.
Commissioner Strickland.
Here.
Commissioner Lehman.
Here.
Commissioner Tagney.
Here.
Vice Chair Simmons.
Here.
And Chair Davies.
Here. And we are joined this evening by Community Development Director David Loya. Next, this evening, we have oral communications. During this time, people may make comments about items that are not on the agenda. If you wish to speak on one of our agenda items, you will have an opportunity when we're discussing those items. If you have comments about items that are not listed on our agenda today, please line up now behind the lectern. If you are on Zoom and you wish to make comments on matters that are not on today's agenda, please raise your hand by selecting the raise hand icon on the right side of your screen or by pressing *9 on your phone. The clerk will unmute you when it is your turn to speak. With that, I'd like to open public comment. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to comment during early oral communications. Feel free to state your name for the record. May we have the first speaker, please?
Hi, good evening. I'm Lulu Michelson, and I am a professor, a lecturer at Cal Poly Humboldt, and I have invited, with David Loya's permission, my class, which is focused on local government planning, to attend this evening. This is actually our class time, so that's perfect, and we have a really thoughtful group of undergrad and graduate students who are learning about the intersection of local government policy and planning. We just finished a unit on the general plan, and we spent time looking at the Gateway Area Plan, and we're just here today to observe and to see public engagement in action. And assigned for today was a few readings about the way in which planning commissions shape public processes in California, and we're really grateful for your volunteer leadership in our community and look forward to being present today and observing, and then we'll be debriefing in our class on Thursday and continuing our learning on this subject. So I just wanted to give you some context for the crowd, and really grateful that we're able to see planning in action in our community. So thank you for having us today.
Thanks for your comments. You are all most welcome. We are just a group of citizen volunteers here who are engaged in community issues, so no special necessary experience to be on the Planning Commission. It's a good diverse group of people, so we're glad you're here to hear our deliberations this evening. Joanne.
Hi, my name is Joanne McGarry, and I like to talk in threes. So the first thing I'm going to say is I'm so excited that these undergraduate students are here. I was an undergraduate taking planning classes at UC Davis many decades ago, and this is bringing back fond memories of my learning about this whole democratic process. My second thing is I just want to say how wonderful your presentation, Commissioner Davies, was to the City Council last week. So if anybody in this room and listening did not get a chance to listen to the report that Scott Davies gave about the Planning Commission, it was in poetry form, and it was quite wonderful. And I do hope that it gets printed out in big print, and I can offer a sandwich board to put it on, and we can have it available, because to me, I come to these meetings, and usually I'm one of very few people in attendance. And I just think it's really important at this time in our world that, especially in our country, that locally we keep on top of what's happening, and so that we can be organized and unified in community for the future, because it's looking very interesting about that. So that's the second thing I wanted to say. And the third thing I wanted to say is the importance of every position in this room. I guess there's 4 positions now, but the person speaking here, the people on the dais, the staff, I call it the triangle of power, the power of 3. And this position is as important as anything else in the room. So my speaking up, I encourage anybody listening or watching, tell your friends, come speaking up. I know that there's some positions potentially opening up on the Planning Commission in the near future. So let's get involved in our community as best we can for democracy's sake.
Thank you so much for your comments, Joanne. Anybody else here in the room like to speak this evening? David, anybody waiting online to join us? All right. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. As always, we appreciate your participation and input. We're going to move on to item 3 now, which is our consent calendar. We have one item on consent this evening, which is to approve Planning Commission minutes from our regular meeting, January 28th, 2025. Would any commissioners like to pull this item, or do we have a motion?
I move to accept.
We have a motion to approve those minutes. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. We're moving on now to public hearings. Having no public hearings this evening, we will move on to business items. Our business item this evening is to provide direction on the community benefits program. And I know David has a staff report for us, but I want to let the commission know that my view on this is that I know we have new commissioners who were not part of our discussions, which I think the last time we took this up was in 2023, so it's been a little while. However, at that time, the commission made a very comprehensive list, which we have here, and ranked a variety of community benefits. Most importantly, as Joanne was talking about the triangle here, with a huge amount of written public input, public comment, people joining us. And so because of that, I am hesitant to want to tangle with the work we've already done too much, because we would be doing so in absent of the community input that we had when we last visited this issue. So I just wanted to say that briefly before we get our staff report, after which we will have an opportunity to ask questions of staff, and then we will take public comment and deliberate. So David, staff report.
All right, thank you, Chair. So I do have a presentation tonight, and I do, in this presentation, kind of go back to the origins because we have new folks in the room. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page when we're getting ready to make these decisions. So I wouldn't say it's exceedingly long, but it's lengthy. I'll certainly come up for air several times, and feel free to interrupt if you have something burning that you want to say. So with our community benefits program, we are, as the chair mentioned, what I hope is close to being able to finalize this program. It's connected with a lot of the planning work that we did towards the end of last year, and it'll have application beyond just the Gateway area. So I'm just going to start with sort of the basics. The concept really came out of this idea that if we were going to transition away from discretionary permits, where the Planning Commission had the opportunity to weigh in on specific project level conditions of approval that might have a benefit to the project itself, but also might have a benefit to the community, and move into a situation where we were principally permitting or ministerially permitting the opportunity necessarily to have those community benefits. And so that was kind of the concept that we started with, and the idea being that you could approve these projects with a ministerial approval as long as they gave a community benefit. And as the chair mentioned, we spent a lot of energy whittling down from literally a benefit that related to almost every policy. Some had multiple benefits per policy in the prior general plan to just a handful. I think we have about 30 now that we're looking at. And so the concept was boiled into the Gateway Area Plan. Here's a excerpt from the Gateway Area Plan that defines the regulatory framework. I'm not going to read this, but it basically reiterates what I just told you. And then in companion with this is out of Chapter 2 of our Gateway Area Plan. We listed out this table of categories of community amenities. These were the types of areas where we wanted to see benefit to the community from these large-scale housing developments. Everything from housing creation, arts and culture, et cetera, that you see on the list there. The Gateway Plan also goes into a little bit of detail about what are examples of those. And so one thing I just want to identify and daylight here is that some of these examples may not have a corresponding benefit in the community benefits program ultimately. So as you're thinking about this, that might be one area where you might look back. All of these examples came from that public process. The public process was protracted and convoluted. And so, we might want to go back in and clean up Table 6 when we get done with this work. That's just a note for us. So these are the kinds of things that we were talking about. So within housing creation as a category, you might have rapid production of new housing as a community benefit that we wanted to see accrue to the community from these projects. Now that rapid production of new housing is basically, first in. We want to encourage people to start building housing because we're in a housing crisis. And when you think about it, that's sort of an embedded kind of benefit. The project is a housing project, and we're accepting the fact that you're building a housing project. It's intrinsic to the nature of the project itself. Whereas other items on this list, for example, let's say affordable housing, the affordable housing goals. When you make a requirement for affordable housing, you're actually reducing the amount of revenue that project is going to create. You're costing that project money above and beyond what its intrinsic cost is. So we have a mix of those, and we'll get into that when we start looking at the details. So from this policy document, we then took it a step further from that concept and identified how the community benefits should be leveraged. So here's Table 7. Again, we're in the Gateway Area Plan. And you can see that there are these multiple tiers. There's a base tier all the way up to Community Benefits Bonus Tier 7. And you can see that the, depending on the district that you see on the left here, the community benefit tiers are available only in some districts. So if you're in the Gateway neighborhood, you can't get to Community Benefits Bonus Tier 4. And part of that is because these are also connected to the size of the building. So the idea being the larger the building, the more development is going on, the more community benefit we wanted to get out of it. And so that last table just reinforced this idea. So in this subsection here, it gives a lot of detail about, density and height and all these other things, but it also outlines where the community benefits are required. And you can see in all of the bonus tiers 1 through 4, we state that they're required. So thus far, we know that we want projects to provide community benefits. We know that the larger the project is, the more community benefits we want to see out of it. And we know that they will be required as a condition of this ministerial permitting. Just incidentally, if you look down each of these columns, you'll note that these columns reinforce both with respect to the density, the maximum building height, maximum number of stories, this idea that higher levels of density would require higher levels of community benefit. We embedded that same concept into the Gateway Code. So the Gateway Code is the actual law that is implementing the policy that we were just looking at. I'm not going to go over this at all because it just reiterates in different form exactly what we just discussed. But this is actually the legislation that says projects will give us community benefits. We're good so far. I'm seeing head nods. Okay, so here's kind of the tricky bit, because when we were adopting these codes, the original intent was to embed the community benefits program into the legislation. For reasons related to our process, and also to give a little bit more flexibility, the council and the commission decided to move the community benefits program out of the Gateway Code and into a separate resolution. Just a little bit of background on that. One of the reasons was because a lot of the policy that was originally being developed for the Gateway Code, the commission realized would benefit other areas of the city as well. If we adopted form-based codes in those areas, you could apply these same higher density policies. And the same was thought about the about the community benefits program. So by moving it out of the Gateway Code and into a separate resolution, you could have the Gateway Code or the Valley West Code or the Uniontown Center Code point to that community benefits program and say, you can use those community benefits. So that's about the point we got to with respect to the community benefits program. And this document actually points back to the resolution and to the policy documents that we just looked at. So backing up a little bit more and just a super high level overview of the engagement that went into developing these community benefits. And this is really only a partial summary, but we knew this from the very beginning that we wanted to implement this program. We were discussing with people when we were at the visioning stage, before we even got into any new policy. We were discussing with the community, with the various committees, with the Planning Commission, through all the stakeholder engagement we did, what do you want to see as community benefits? So here's a partial list of things that came up out of this. And we got a lot of data that really pointed to these categories of affordable housing, alternative transportation, and open space primarily. And I would say that through the process, changed multiple times depending on the group that we were working with, and ultimately the Planning Commission's work that they did, which is the table that's included in your packet and that we'll look at in just a moment here, was sort of a whittling down based on the opinions of the folks in this room as to how to best meet what the community was saying they wanted to see, while at the same time balancing the fact that some of these community amenities were going to be very costly to development and might actually, instead of stimulating development by giving an incentive of ministerial permitting or principally permitted permitting, might oppress future development by making the cost of it too high. So, I think that process that we went through was a valuable one, and you'll see categories in that table where we tried to assess value, and I'll get to that in just a moment. The community benefits program went through, as I mentioned, several iterations. Before we got to the iteration that we're on right now, they looked like this. It was about 6 pages of text with a very complicated process. I have copies of that here today, and I put a copy on your in front of you here for you to take a look at. The policies that were in this version rejected from consideration to get us into the smaller subset that we have today. And I show this mostly just so that you have that broader context, in particular for the newer commissioners. I want you to really understand the conversation that we went through. If you're having an idea about something that you feel like we maybe have missed, it's probably been thought of before, and it's probably on this list, and we can probably go back and tease apart why it's not on the list anymore. I do definitely want you to feel like you're part of this conversation, though, and if there's something that you really feel is missing, I think we need to have that conversation. So where we landed, where the commission landed about how this community benefits program might actually be operationalized is what was included in your packet in that table. It shows a ranking. So the commission went through and ranked from 1 to 3, 0 to 3, I guess, their priority in terms of which community benefits they wanted to make sure were highlighted. They gave those points based on that ranking. So you can see where they ranked them highly, 1 being high, 3 being low. You get the inverse of points. The higher the points, the more valuable that priority is. That benefit receives more of a point total. And then there's this list of approximately 30 benefits that, some of which are embedded or intrinsic to the project, some of which have a high value, some of which have a low value. Now, I just want to take an aside here to tease apart the conversation that we had about the value. I think it's really important for us to be focused on the net impact on the community, not the cost of the community benefit. At one point, there was a discussion around, well, we wanted to make sure that, developers were paying enough. And I don't think it's about paying, it's about contributing to the community. And so I think that's ultimately where the Planning Commission landed. But I do think it's important to keep in mind the community benefits that are going to cost projects more, again, to avoid, suppressing projects that might otherwise come forward because we're asking them to do a lot of high dollar value work for us.
David, point of clarity, please.
Yeah.
What are the yellow highlights there?
The yellow highlights, and we'll look at these in a little bit more closer detail when we open up the spreadsheet. But the yellow highlights were the benefits that we wanted to come back to, where that composition of the commission wanted to come back to and dig into it in a little bit more detail, because we were getting hung up on those. And so to move the conversation forward, we said, hey, look, we'll come back to these. We're going to highlight them so we don't lose track of them. That's where they are. The gray highlighted ones, the low lighted ones, if you will, are community benefits that the commission was considering either dropping from the list of community benefits and or making a standard in the form-based code so that they didn't apply to community benefit program.
So the yellow highlighted ones were essentially what we were calling bike rack items.
Bike rack items, yeah. Yeah, so we had instead of a parking lot, we had a bike rack because we're groovy like that. Okay, so again, getting to how this might work, you build a list that's based on point totals that ultimately relates to the priorities of the community, or as expressed through the Planning Commission, the City Council. And then we would take those point totals and require projects to contribute a certain number of points depending on how tall the building is. Again, relating back to that concept that the larger the impact the development is going to have, the more community benefit we want to get out of it. So this was about the simplest process that we could come up with that still ensured that we'd have a range, a variety of different community benefits accruing to the community, that larger projects would have a higher point total and so would have to commit more, and that the number of categories that the benefits were spread across, and again, this is still in draft form. If you want to amend this, you can, but the number of categories would, you wouldn't have everybody dump everything into, say, housing. I'm going to do a rapid production of housing. I'm going to do affordable housing, and I'm going to, make my housing, have some owner options in them. Those are all pretty much intrinsic to the project, and the commission wanted to make sure that things were spread around a little bit. So that's kind of where we got to, and so the goal for tonight and the goal moving forward would be to kind of pick up this work, make sure you understand how it works, and then finalize a recommendation to the city council about what to include in a resolution that would be applied as a community benefit program to the Gateway currently, because that's the only district that has a community benefits option, but also to future areas if we adopt that trigger for those areas as well, where we're trading off, ministerial permitting for community benefits. Before I close, I think that's about it. Yeah, that's it. But before I close, I want to note also that what has happened since we started this conversation, 6-7 years ago, when this was a really radical idea for how to streamline housing and to encourage people to develop in Arcata and to make sure that the community still was accruing some benefit from these projects. The state's adopted a couple hundred new housing laws, and some of those housing laws, I think to an extent, kind of supersedes some of this work that we've done. Right now, a housing project has to be subject to only objective design standards. I haven't consulted with HCD. I don't know how they would view these. I don't know if these community benefits, because they're pretty objective. They're, explicit how they, are assigned to projects, and it is embedded in our code as a requirement. So I'm assuming we can still apply this, but that's a little untested at this point. It's also important to note that with the state density bonus law, if a project were to come in and claim state density bonus, they could point to these community benefits programs and say, I'm not doing those, because the new state density bonus law allows the developer to basically have an unlimited number of swipes of a magic wand to eliminate things that are cost infeasible for their project, which the state has assigned a very low bar. So all the developer has to do is claim, I can't afford to do that, and they don't have to do it. So I want to be aware of that going into the finalizing this discussion, that we have those two kind of state level goalposts that we've got to be alert to.
Not to be too circular about it, but if someone chooses the state density bonus, that is going to be a community benefit, because it would.
Absolutely.
So it's there's still a connection there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think affordable housing, as that Slido showed, was one of the highest priorities consistently throughout the public process. And so if someone comes in and does a state density bonus project, we're going to get a mixed use project, which is what we want to see. Mixed income project, which is what we want to see. And we'll get that affordability out of the project. So,
Okay, real quick before I ask for questions, just to clarify our goals for this evening. On the one hand, we're creating a resolution for the community benefits, which will allow it to apply across the city as we create new form-based codes for Valley West or Sunny Brae or wherever, but also will allow us to turn the dial, adjust this program more expeditiously, correct? That's one piece of it.
yeah, that's right. And I wouldn't say that you have to develop a resolution tonight, just to make a recommendation on the content that's going to go into that resolution, and staff will take care of the resolution piece.
The other part of it is just to kind of agree as a group that we're still okay with the community benefits as listed from the work we did previously.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So I'd love to get some simple clarifying questions from the commissioners. Any questions you have, understanding that we're going to reserve kind of more detailed discussions for after public comment. Go ahead, Amanda.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just curious, when you say still okay with the content, following all those other previous discussions, do you mean in light of the fact that they would become more broadly applicable, outside of the gateway?
I don't mean that per se. What I mean is that when we discussed these community benefits as a commission over a very long series of meetings, joint sessions with city council, public comment, et cetera, we got this far, but not quite to the goal line. So we need to, as a group, sign off on some version of the work that the commission has done previously to assemble everything that David just gave us a sort of debrief on. As I said earlier, I feel like that what was important about that was the amount of public comment and input we had in generating and then refining and editing this list to see to what it is that's before us. So one part of it is just, yes, we're okay with this, and then, or not, if there are questions, we can talk about it. The other part is making a recommendation so that the city council then can turn this into a resolution so that it can apply across the city, but also be done so in a fashion that will be easy for us to adjust in the future. Like we've talked about with inclusionary zoning and some of the other issues that we know are going to impact how development occurs, but we don't know exactly how they're going to impact. And so being able to sign off on something and say, this amount of work is done, whether it's inclusionary zoning, we're going to stick with this recommendation, knowing that once we get some actual projects built, we'll be able to look at those impacts and say, that's not what we expected, let's make some changes, or this is great, let's keep moving. So that was kind of a long answer. Did that answer your question? Okay.
And just one last thing, I do have the spreadsheet up here so we can go over, go over what the benefits are, including the ones that were in the bike rack before. So I anticipate that being part of your deliberations.
Yeah, I just want to point out that part of our assignment here is this objective standards that these all must meet. And that has, as David pointed out, changed from the earlier discussions that created some of this. So as we're going through it, that's for sure a criteria that we might need to focus on.
That's important. Peter?
David, I don't know if you can answer this, but are there other communities in California that have tried to establish a program like this, and has it worked? Have people chosen community benefits over the density bonus?
So I've got a list here of different communities that have used community benefits. They're used in a couple of different ways. Some of them require them. So for example, Benicia has a required community benefit program if you go above 2 stories, unless you're 100% affordable. Some require them for all projects. Some require if they go to, exceed development standards. And so they've kind of been used in different ways. I'm not aware of a community that's attempted to do what we were attempting to do with them. It was a pretty cool idea.
Have these worked?
Yeah, I think they're working. I mean, I think that, there's still development going on in all of these communities. But again, most of these have a trigger that requires them. And so, Culver City has a way different, development market than Arcata does. So I can't tell you for sure, how, Emeryville's community benefits program will relate to ours. It may be working great for them. It may be a complete flop for us. I really can't tell you. What I can tell you is that this goes back to the thesis that we began with at the very beginning of the conversation with the community about this work, and that's that developers that I talk to will tell me, and they'll tell you if you ask them, if you could pay extra to expedite the planning process and be certain about the outcome, would you take that? Would you pay that? And they say, I would. So there's kind of like the cost, the time, and the uncertainty, and they have a relationship so that if you could pay a higher cost and reduce the uncertainty and time, that's worth it to these developers. So that was kind of the original thinking behind this whole community benefits as a trade-off between ministerial permitting for higher scale development. And I think, if we had implemented it 7 years ago, I think it would have been working well. I don't know how it's going to work in today's more lenient, legal framework, based on what the state has done. We'll have to see. Mm-hmm. Some developers may be more than willing to throw a community benefit down so they don't have to deal with affordable housing.
Yeah, I just have a question. Kind of curious about what is currently implemented in terms of the Gateway Area Plan as it refers to the community benefits program. So like, is there a placeholder and how is that working? Are we waiting for some sort of approval?
Yeah, we are waiting for this approval to have a community benefit program. I haven't been pushed to have to make the zoning interpretation at this point, but there's one of two solutions because there's not, in fact, a community benefits program. If the code says you have to do the community benefits program and it's not there,
Yeah.
you either say you don't have to do it because it's not there, or you say you can't build because it's not there. And I'm inclined to say you don't have to do it because it's not there.
Got it.
So this is really timely. I mean, I don't want to rush this process. If this takes 2 or 3 meetings, it takes 2 or 3 meetings. If you get through it tonight, that's great too.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to point out Culver City and Santa Monica had definitely both had density bonus projects. I just know that from talking to people about things in LA.
Their density bonus or community benefits?
Density bonus
Yeah.
with affordable housing in exchange for not having to do certain requirements in the cities.
That- yeah.
Well, maybe not just this, maybe also other things that the cities are requiring.
So Matt, are you saying that the developers are choosing density bonus over their community benefits programs?
I can't say that because I don't know how many projects have been built without using density bonus, but I do know that some projects are being built using density bonus where they're getting concessions.
I can just say that a lot of projects are using the state density bonus. I'm curious about Emeryville's, I saw the note that it replaces the state density bonus, so they must have worked with HCD or something like that. And so I'm curious about the logistics of that.
Yeah, I am curious about that too. I don't recall the details there, but when I read this morning, when I was preparing, I was like, I can't remember what the details are, but that's odd. I don't know how they could replace the state density bonus unless they are, if they give benefits that are beyond what the state provides. And that might have been, this is data from 3 years ago. Density bonus has been amended since then, so I don't know where they're at right now.
This chart is from 3 years ago?
Yeah, we put this together 2 or 3 years ago. That's how long we've been working on this.
That's how long we've been working on this. So
Actually, I think we started in detail talking about this in 2019. Oh.
Yep. So, I feel like we're starting to drift into a kind of a conversation about this, so I'm going to hit the pause button and open public comment now. We'll have a chance to come back to this and kind of flesh out everyone's questions. Having open public comment, if you're in person, please feel free to line up at the lectern. If you are on Zoom, please raise your hand by selecting the raise hand icon on the right side of your screen or by pressing *9 on your phone. The clerk will unmute you when it is your turn to speak. And as always, feel free to state your name for the record. Is there anyone here that would like to make public comment on the community benefits program? Okay. All right.
I would just like to clarify the differentiation between the community benefits plan and that other legislative concept you guys were talking about. Just like, are there specific pitfalls or benefits that like a development project might favor one, or yeah, what's that about?
David, can you speak to that? The question between, I think you're talking about community benefits versus the state density bonus.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so the community benefits program was designed so that the developers would come in, see the standards, and apply those standards to their projects, and then we would approve them as long as they provided us, community benefits in addition. So that was sort of like the deal with the developer. With state density bonus, the developer volunteers to provide affordable housing, and by providing that affordable housing, they get an additional density on top of whatever the city would authorize. So if the city authorizes, 15 units per acre, the density bonus could actually bump that to 30 units per acre, doubling the density that the jurisdiction otherwise allows. And then it also gives the developer the opportunity to get concessions and waivers from the requirements from the city. And so that could be a standard, that could be a requirement, anything that costs money to the project. The developer has the opportunity to tell the city, I'm not doing that because it makes my project infeasible. So there's kind of a tension between these two. If the community benefits cost money to the developers, they might decide instead to do a density bonus project, skip our community benefits program entirely, and be able to develop anyway.
David, you didn't mention to qualify for density bonus, you have to provide some affordable units.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
The affordable units are the trigger for density bonus.
It's a good question. Basically, we have limited amount of authority because the state also has jurisdiction over what we do. So in some ways, the community benefits is us as a planning commission in conjunction with a ton of community input, trying to create ways that we can incentivize developers to build and get things that we as a community think would be important, understanding that a developer may also instead choose to get the density bonus by building affordable housing. As I said earlier, though, affordable housing is also one of our community benefits, so it's kind of a win-win. From our perspective, it's just a different flavor of a concession to the developer as a incentive to build.
So it's like an incentive to get those community development projects on the road, or essentially get more community.
More housing production.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
I gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
Then it can be more broadly applied. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good question. Joanne?
Anybody else here?
Anyone else?
The state, my name's Joanne McGarry. The state density bonus, concerns me a little bit if that's the option that developers are going to go for, because as everybody's been saying a mantra, but we need housing, but we need housing, but we need housing. At the same time, we need a lifestyle that's not, that suits our community. So the community benefits program, and I guess you're going to be discussing a little bit more. All I want to say is historically, I've been coming to this meeting, and what has, transpired with ministerial approvals and 4 stories and, higher and different areas of the thing with the gateway plan. I just really want to say I want Arcata to not just conform to some sort of restrictions that some sort of generalized thing that the state is putting out there. So I want us to be unique and creative and livable. So, cookie cutter housing and high density, just because that's what the developers say they want to go with, I just am really, really nervous about that concept.
That's fair, and I'll expand just a little bit, which is to say, some voices in the community don't want us to do anything and keep Arcata frozen as it is, circa 1972. Other people want to see development. On the outside, though, we do have the state density bonus is out of our control. We don't have a say over that. The reason that we're doing the community benefits program, which, as David said, hasn't been done before, is exactly what you're suggesting, which is that we've had a vision as a community to try and take a middle path where we can still incentivize housing, but also get benefits to the community has identified are important. So we're still actually in public comment right now, so I just want to make sure there's nobody on. Okay, so all right, end of public comment. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. I'll bring it back to the commission, and go ahead, Ashton.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to follow up to that response. Thank you, Joanne. I think like this is our opportunity to shape, what and how this community can add community benefit, and we could even look at how we could make this more enticing than the state density bonus. I don't know if that's possible. Most developers that I've worked with will use the state density bonus, and whether or not we accept this and implement it would not affect whether or not they can use that state density bonus at this time. But I think it could be an interesting project to see how this could be more enticing and better suited to the city of Arcata with some research.
Well, I think the research is let's build some projects and see what happens. Are they choosing the density bonus? Are they choosing community benefits? If they're choosing community benefits, how's that working and which ones? And that's this back to this general drumbeat of let's get some projects done so that we can actually tell what's working. And if it's not, then how can we kind of fiddle with the switches? Dan, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, a question for Ashton and or the commission or staff. If a developer is comfortable with mixed income development, affordable housing, then it seems likely they'll head towards density bonus. If they want to just do a market rate project, that's not an option. And that's when our community benefit program comes in, right? Just as a point of clarity.
I'm not sure if we know what the answer is. I'm not sure if we know what the answer is. I think the state density bonus would take some of the time and uncertainty away, and so that might be an advantage.
Well, they have no option at state density bonus if they're not willing to do affordable housing, mixed income kind of stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Any questions down that end of the table there, Abby? No? Okay, well. Oh, thank you so much for coming. That's perfect time. We're glad you came to join us, and I hope some of you end up volunteering for a planning commission sometime. Thank you for coming.
Come back.
Should we maybe start with the bike rack items and just sort of try to knock those out since they're what we flagged for ourselves in the past?
If no one has any other preliminary questions, that seems like a great place to start. Do you want to take us through those, David?
Yeah, sure. So the first one is line 5 here. This was to provide showers and locker facilities for use by employees who bike to work. So in a mixed-use project, you'd have showers incorporated into the project. What do y'all think? That was, I think, removed. It got a rank of 0 and is basically on the chopping block from last time.
The ranking is from us, is that correct?
The ranking is from
like
the planning.
straw poll or
Yep,
something?
ranking is from the planning commission. Yeah, you guys had gone through each one of these, ranked them individually, where there, if I remember the process right, where there was agreement, we just made that the rank. Where there was a discussion, you guys went back and forth and ended on these rankings. So each of these, again, for example, mix of unit sizes, each unit size at least 20% of the total unit count, and then we were to add a threshold. That had a high ranking, so we gave it a total of 3 points, which in the point structure that we discussed 3 points for a 4-story building in one benefit and one category would be enough to say, okay, you've met your community benefit threshold for that project. So they did a mix of unit sizes, they're done with community benefits.
David, is 0 the highest ranking here?
0 means it wasn't ranked at all. So
All right.
0 means they were wanting to drop this off. So the ones that have 0s were wanting to drop off. The ones that are yellow with a 0 means there was a lot of discussion. We couldn't quite get there. We need to get there before we finalize.
I have a comment on that top one, which is, it's great to have shower and locker facilities for employees who bike or walk, but they need to be at the place of employment, not at your home.
No, that's the community benefit here. So the idea behind this, we had a lot of different what I would call pieces of infrastructure for alternative transportation. And the idea here was, you can build all the bike lanes you want in the world, but if people aren't able to store their bikes when they get to work, or, take a shower and change when they get to work, they're less likely to use their bikes. So building out that additional private side infrastructure to ensure that there's an end-to-end for these types of uses that we envision in this area is where a lot of these concepts came from. If you look at that old list, we had a lot of great ideas that never made it to this list, and this was one of the few remaining vestiges that, at least in the prior discussion, is on the chopping block. So you're exactly right. At the place of work, you're building a mixed-use building, you're building a ground floor commercial use or office use or whatever, and in that you're putting in showers and lockers, place to park a bike. And that's the community benefit.
Yeah, I'd be curious about this. I'll just say I used to live in a Nordic country and I loved having my shower facilities, and my colleagues would kayak to work and use them. But, we were a large office, right? And I'm just having a hard time, I think, envisioning a mixed-use development with a large enough office to kind of make that an incentive that would have the impact we would want, which is incentivizing, green transport enough to have like an air quality impact. I'm having a hard time imagining that. So I'd be willing to let go of this one.
Is it possible that we can just take a broader approach and say, for all of those benefits that previously the commission decided to axe, is there anyone that has a problem with any of those specific axings, as it were? Or do we want to go through them line by line? Go ahead, Ashton.
I guess I feel like, this is the first time I'm looking at this, and I really appreciate the background. I don't necessarily feel comfortable just like with the thumbs up, tonight. Moving forward, I would love to spend some time with this on my own time and kind of go through them and come back with comments. However, I understand if you all are eager to move something forward tonight. I don't necessarily feel like we need to go through the list tonight and get kind of all the commissioners' comments on all of the options, but I'm open to that process. I guess I'm just thinking on my own personal comfort level, I would love to spend a little bit more time kind of digesting each of these items and thinking through it.
However we get there, it's important that everyone feels comfortable with what we decide on. So whatever time that takes, we have for it, whether it's something that, as David said earlier, we take 2 or 3 meetings to go through. I think that makes sense. If people, especially newer commissioners, feel like, could we have some time to look through this and familiarize, get a little more background on it, then maybe we can have more effective discussion. I'm open to that too. I'd like to hear what other commissioners think about just our process as we're beginning to go through this.
I would like to see us clean this up a little bit. If there's a strong majority of the group here that wants to eliminate a few of those, because we have studied it enough or discussed it or remember the discussion, like the shower thing that we just nipped on, I feel like we could at least do that. there's a lot of time for revisit on the broader list.
I guess I have a suggestion of how to work through it, which is, we go through the ones that we're unsure about and we say, all right, does anyone need to have this in the community benefits program? And if none of us need to have it in the community benefits program, I would think we could probably move on without a conversation. But if there are ones that we want to flag and we say I think this is a good idea, we can, but at least then we can start kind of moving through.
That sounds good. We can sort of make a list. Go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah, I would just say, I'm one of the new commissioners in question. I am familiar with this list because I got to put my stickies on the for the public comment process. I just want to second. I think if we could just triage the list a bit, and too bad Lulu isn't still here. She could help us with a red light, green light, yellow light process for this, because I imagine some will need to deliberate more. And maybe if we could just focus that to make our subsequent 2 meetings or however many on this move faster, that'd be appreciated.
Okay. Go ahead, Matt.
So does anyone need to have showers and locker rooms as a community benefit? I think we can probably drop that one. And I think that's the easier one. I don't think they'll all be that easy.
Okay. You might ask 2 questions. Does anyone need to have this? Does anyone need more time to think about it?
Does anyone need more time to think about it?
Let me just say, it's a great idea. When we built the new shot center on campus, we built a shower and lockers, and we have bike racks, and there are a lot of bikes. People bike to work. So I think it's a wonderful thing. I think that putting it in a place where people live is the wrong place.
So it's the ground floor commercial of a mixed use building, right? So, the shot center's on the ground floor. Some people live in the building upstairs, but some people are biking into work.
I would say if people are biking to work, it's important. I would call it important.
Okay, so the other alternative to asking 2 questions is let's ask the 1 question, and then if people have misgivings because we're going to come back to this, you can say, hey, last time, that'll speed things up a little bit too. So am I sensing we're keeping this one for now to talk about?
Sounds like we
more?
need to talk about it more.
Okay.
So we're on to number 11 now.
Okay, so this was electric bike share, project-based electric bike share program. I think this needs to be refined a little bit. 30 years is quite a time to require someone to do that, but if y'all want to keep this.
I was surprised the value was estimated as low for this. It seems like having a 30-year program could have, yeah.
Yeah, I know from our own bike share program that we have, the cost is high. So we might need to go back and reevaluate some of those as well.
Yeah, I think a developer would look at that 30 years and be really scared.
And the technology is going to change massively over 30 years.
Yeah, good point.
So can we drop this? Can we just all?
Is there anyone that would like to either discuss this more, or is everyone okay with removing this from the list?
Sorry, David. So what was the logic behind making it so the developer creates their own bike share program as opposed to contributes to an existing municipal bike share program?
I don't know that we had an explicit conversation around that. I think this might have been a riff on another community benefit program where we had project-based car share, which makes a lot more sense for because you've got to have somewhere to plug them in. I think is sort of what the end result was. So maybe that was a concept here too. Sorry, I just don't remember the discussion that well.
Well, show of hands if anyone would like to keep this for a further discussion. Okay, let's move on to 15.
Okay, and this one, I think, actually still had a ranking, so this one wasn't proposed for being nixed per se. Oops, what happened there?
David, I question, or Commission, I question whether or not this one meets the objective criteria.
Yeah, so this one did have a ranking associated with it. So space design intended to use a publicly available native arts and cultural space developed in partnership with tribally organized nonprofits and/or local tribal governments, maybe indoor or outdoor. And I think you're right, Dan, that this is less than objective.
I would also say it just seems like it says at the end there, it may be indoor or outdoor, but it has to be a publicly available space. So how would this indoor space be consistently publicly available?
I think if there's a lobby, this is a common feature, like public art going in bigger projects. And what I'm seeing the commentary here that's making it unique to Arcata is that it is bringing in the tribal governments, rather than just being like community-led art. It's specifically tribal-led, which I think is pretty cool. And I do see it as potentially objective, so I don't know. Yeah, maybe we can have further discussion about that.
I was going to say, my thought of a subjective would be like have good art, right? But just have art of any kind. It feels like an objective sort of checkbox sort of thing.
I guess the slippery slope might be, so you have a lobby or an entryway and you just say, yeah, these walls are this space. And if they just hang two things, is that enough? Or if they don't rotate, or who juries it? You know, hey, I got my art, come on.
How about for now, we decide whether to talk about it more or not, and then recognize that we need to maybe refine it
Let's leave this one on the list
if it goes forward. Yeah.
for more discussion.
I'm sorry, was the decision to keep it on the list?
I think we're going to keep it on the list and move on to the next item.
Okay, I think that took care of the yellow ones. Pretty sure. Oh no, I'm sorry. Okay, so pay into a transportation fund equal to 1.5% of the total project construction costs. And then we use that to make bike lanes, trail enhancements, and other public spaces.
Obviously needs a little bit of editing, as it's going to be a citywide and it's referencing specifically the Gateway area.
Yeah.
I just think it's kind of interesting because this one starts to cross over into the way that community benefit agreements are generally done on other kinds of investments, which might be an interesting approach just generally if we're worried about the impact of any single one of these or the favorability of any single one of these design elements, that you just create a community benefits fund and a board that governs it, and then you have pretty much the most malleable form of community benefit arrangement. I bet that was discussed in next. I just say that's kind of what struck me with a few of these elements.
Yeah, we did have that side conversation too. And I think that the idea that people now had an opportunity to weigh in on what the impacts would be of these investments, I think was attractive to people. But I think it's worth discussing further. It could be that, because we had a bunch of these that were like, pay into this, that's equal to 1.5%, pay into that, that's 1.5%. So maybe one of the categories, we could have several of these categories, and one of them becomes more just pay into the community benefit fund.
And that would be a committee formed or something that would manage that?
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to
Oh, definitely.
talk a little bit more about how, to operationalize that. I think that, the beauty of having it specific to what the fund is going to be used for is that you don't have to then manage it. It would probably end up being, a city council subcommittee or city council decision or maybe a new committee of some type.
I think there was also some discussion of like having the community benefit be more directly tied to the specific project rather than just sort of going into a citywide fund. And so some of these reflect that and then some of them don't. And I think that was sort of the compromise. Yeah.
I think that's really interesting, the idea of the community benefit fund. And I wonder if that could be, again, in this like idea of the enticing developers to use this, that there's maybe this like, you can get away with not doing some of these if you pay a certain fee to, commit to the fund that is then decided by the community, and therefore you don't have to do this public art kind of thing. And how that all functions, I don't know, but I think that is quite interesting.
And I know we're not going to resolve this now, but the other thing that popped into my head was that some of these community benefits might have a fairly modest cost to the developer, but might have a disproportionately, higher cost benefit to the public. And when we were thinking about it in terms of the gateway, there's not a lot of public space in the gateway. L Street, the trail on L Street is basically it. And so the idea here is that projects we're going to be contributing to publicly accessible open space, and there's some standards that are associated with that, but then you could also have things that are being sprinkled across the community that are going to have that higher value, that if we were collecting just 1.5% of these funds, we may not ultimately have the funding to go out and build out these things, because we would then have to acquire land, and we'd have to do the project, and it would be prevailing wage, and so on and so forth. So there was that to the discussion as well.
Well, keep this one, yeah.
So I want to bring up the fact that we have, for on-site enclosed and secure bike parking and storage for residents, employees, and or the general public, this kind of is the same as the other one above. In addition, the commission recommended and the council adopted a one bike parking space per bedroom standard, which maybe obviates the need for community benefit that would kind of do the same thing. So just for
So you're saying
context.
that item 29 is redundant regarding existing code requirements?
At least for residential projects, yeah. So it is duplicative of the one above, I believe, and it's not required for residential.
Is that specific to Gateway?
In the gateway it is, yeah.
So if we're trying to make this more general, we should include it and just strike Gateway.
Yeah, that is true. You could do that, and you could do that.
I think this one was suggested before we had adopted the fantastic bike parking requirements in the general plan. And so I would be okay with eliminating this go above for what are already great standards.
I am biting my tongue, Matt.
But if this were a different place in the city that didn't have that particular
They got into the general plan, so it now, yeah.
It's citywide. I think it's redundant, and I like, merits aside, I think we already have this secured. So I think, is anyone opposed to striking this just on the basis of redundancy? So let's pull that one out. What other,
Okay, so that's all the yellow ones. If we want to pop up to these gray ones, and again, I think the idea was to delete these gray ones, even though they had ranked high and had points and all those other things. So there was conversation at the end about, hey, let's just get rid of this. The project exceeds minimum building energy efficiency required by the California Energy Code requirement.
well,
By
hold on a second,
15%.
David. If we're going to go through these, do we want to start at the top with these gray items and work down again?
If you want, sure. I mean, they're not organized in any particular order.
I see, okay. I mean, just in so much as that we just don't skip over or miss any, but that's fine.
Okay, yeah, so on-site public open space with an improvement cost equal to or exceeding 1.5% total project construction cost. There are some, but not all project types that would require on-site publicly accessible open space. So someone could opt into that if they wanted to design that into their project. If they were doing a mixed-use project that had, a lot of retail commercial, for example, and they wanted to do a little courtyard so that, all those retail commercials could, benefit from that outdoor eating area or whatever, they could then take advantage of this as a community benefit and check that box off.
Are you saying roughly that this might be a already fit into a project, and then they get to just claim this, and it's not really going to benefit the community any more than it already would have?
Yeah, I guess that's one way of phrasing it. I mean, I think I would have said instead that this will benefit the community, period. I think that, part of the idea that we started, the commission went on a thought pattern for a while about like making sure that all these community benefits were an extraction from the developer and that they were going to cost more. And I think the conversation maybe didn't completely resolve, but, my staff recommendation would be to not concentrate on extracting from developers, but concentrate on what's going to be a benefit to the community, even if it's intrinsic to the project. It's still a community benefit, and if those are the things we want, we should ask for them.
So going to that, I think we rank this as a 3, and when you flash the community participation, open space was one of the big ones, and we talked about how there isn't much in the gateway currently. And so I don't know that this is the exact language that we want, but some sort of open space community benefit feels like it needs to stay in the plan. And then we have another one here that dedicate 10,000 square feet to city for public open space. We could merge these somehow or rework them, but something about open space feels like appropriate to me.
Yeah, so there's open space requirements, and I think that the community benefit that would exceed that would just be opt in to meet or exceed open space requirements for this, project category, and I think that might be a good way to merge some of those.
I'm hearing let's keep this for further discussion. And I think implicit in what we're doing here is we're saying we're winnowing this list to the extent that we can, with an intent that in a future meeting we will come back and everyone will be prepared to be decisive about how we want to finalize this list. So just stating that again. Sorry?
Just one question in
Oh, yeah,
in
go
that
ahead,
spirit,
thanks.
which was the 1.5%. How was that threshold or that amount? At least 1.5% decided.
So the projects come in and they provide evaluation, and the at the building permit stage, and the building division reviews that evaluation, and they may amend the valuation. This might surprise you, but some people aren't entirely honest about the cost of their project because the cost of the building permit is related to it. But there are some standards that are in the building code that allow the building division to do that. So they would say, this project is either valued at what you said it was valued at, or else we're going to give it this valuation.
Okay, but the 1.5 was arbitrary.
Very arbitrary.
Okay.
Yeah, super arbitrary.
Let's go on to our next gray item.
Okay, so the next gray item is dedicate more than 10,000 square feet to the city for public open space. And I will just reiterate again, and I will say this until this is adopted, the city does not want more open space. The Environmental Services Division already has a hard time keeping up with the public lands that it already has. The beauty of publicly accessible private open space is the private developer maintains it. Staff is going to recommend you nix this.
Let's nix that. I know that the city is taxed there and doesn't have the bandwidth for more open space, so let's not create a problem.
Okay, and then the last one here, I think, is project exceeds the minimum building energy efficiency by 15%.
I'll just say as an energy person, I think it's a good idea. And I don't know if you've looked at your gas and electricity bills recently, but the cost of power is going up dramatically, and this will help people in the building.
Does anybody remember why this got on the gray list?
I think we just couldn't come to a full decisive, it just got bike racked because we couldn't come to a decision.
I will say, David, that the list that we have in front of us on that same item doesn't include the 15%, and I have it circled because it didn't have a objective numerical, goal. And so that looks better to me than what I saw down here. I mean, that looks good, clean, objective.
The list that's printed out is an earlier version.
Yeah.
The list in the packet does have the 15%.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was going to get worried because we do have about 30 different versions of almost everything related to the gateway. So, okay, so I'm hearing keep this one. Okay. Okay, so that is the list of items that were on there for bike rack and or nixing. So I'll kind of leave it up to you where you all want to go from here, but I think to Commissioner Ham's point, maybe taking a little time, digesting these, reaching out to staff if you have follow-up questions before the next meeting, and we can pick this up again.
That sounds good to me. I think that gives the most chance for new commissioners to kind of spend some time, and I strongly encourage you to utilize staff, not only to sort of answer questions about the item, but also to just kind of look back as you have a little bit, asking questions. How did we get here? What was what was the genesis of these issues? So can we agendize this for our next meeting? Is everyone okay with that as a way forward? And then the goal being, in the next meeting, we can run through the list, the now amended list, and move towards a resolution or recommendation that we can send to the city council. Because, again, reminder, right now, if we have a project, there is no community benefits, so we're stuck until we can make that recommendation to the city council.
Question of commission, are we only going to be tackling the yellow highlighted or yellow and gray, or is it wide open?
My hope is that everyone has a chance to look through the whole list, and that we're adopting a recommendation that encompasses the whole list.
So if there's an item on the list that you feel strongly should be removed,
We can
come
discuss.
prepared to
Yeah.
make that pitch.
Yep. Yeah, and David, this might be a good time. When we were in the heat of the Gateway deliberations, and we were going through community benefits and transportation and state law and all of these other things, it's very easy, we've been on pretty much light duty for a long time here at the commission, which has been fine. But when it has been, there was times where we were doing three or 4 hour meetings a week, including on weekends. And so one of the things that we did was our meeting protocol where so to answer your question, Dan, I think we go through the whole list. There's 30 items on the list, thereabouts. If anyone has a specific item that they want to see removed, then have an elevator pitch about why you want that issue removed, and just try and be concise. And then we can have a discussion based off of that. We can respond. But I think if we do that and stick to that meeting protocol, maybe you could send that back out, David, or we could have it here in case we need it. But I think if everyone does the homework, I think at our next meeting, this is a reasonable list for us to get through. If everyone come in and says, we love all of it, everyone loves all of it, fine. I imagine there'll be some things we want to discuss, remove, we can have a vote. Some people may be for, it'll be a majority thing. But just come prepared if there's things that you want removed or feel passionate about, to just kind of be concise. Yeah.
Are we in that assuming that we are for sure going to revisit all of the yellow or gray highlighted as well? Or should we just take the whole list that's up there and either, if nobody has an elevator pitch about any particular item, assume that we can pass the whole thing?
I would say that we're going to look at the list as a whole. We've addressed the bike rack items this evening and now made them part of that list for consideration, removed a couple for the reasons we discussed. And so let's come prepared to look at the list as a whole. Go ahead.
Is this our only forum for communication as a commission? Can we email or Google Doc?
Because of the Brown Act,
Got it.
we can't.
Okay.
You could talk with one other commissioner if you wanted to discuss it, but you can talk to as many city council members as you like, and you can talk to staff.
Okay.
You
Go
can
ahead.
also email staff and say, staff, I want all the other planning commissioners to know something. Please send it to everyone. And then it goes into our packet. And so I've done that in the past when I was trying to convince everyone of something. I wrote up a memo that then it got put into the packet. So that's another way to communicate in advance of the meeting.
Yeah, but then it becomes public, yeah.
Which is great. Our discussions are public anyways. We're on YouTube right now. Hi, everyone. So yeah, that's how that is. And in the past, we've talked about it as a Brown Act buddy. Hey, I want to discuss this issue. If you have one commissioner that you want to have a conversation with, that's still within the Brown Act. Not a problem. Anything to add to that from the staff perspective?
No, you guys are awesome. I love this. I don't have to do any work anymore. Everybody knows everything.
Been through it a few times. Okay, then I feel like you'll get this on the agenda for our next meeting, and just while we're all here, that next meeting is going to be in 2 weeks, or does a staff calendar show something different?
Yeah, no, your next meeting is on March 11th, which is in 2 weeks from now. And you'll actually have a discretionary permit to review at that time as well.
For what? Do we know?
It's a real treat for y'all, yeah.
Fun.
7 stories?
No.
50 units?
So will we not see the updated version of this list until the packet for the next meeting, or could you just email this out sooner than later?
Yeah, no, I think that it's in the record now. I can email this out to you.
I think that would be helpful.
So you can, work on it. And
Everyone can see the finalized list to kind of mentally lock in. Okay, great. thank you all so much. I appreciate everyone on the commission and your input and thoughts and questions and concerns. This concludes our business item, and we will move on now to correspondence and communications. Do we have any correspondence from Planning Commission members? Peter?
Yeah, I want to go back 2 years when I was first on the commission, and one of the first things that we considered was a new design review permit for what was then the new Cal Poly bookstore. And we talked about it and pretty much agreed that their design was fine. But we, actually Dan was the one who suggested that they consider permeable landscaping and the installation of some landscaping in some areas of the parking lot. And here we are over 2 years later and nothing has happened. So I want to know what we do about that. I mean,
David, can you tell if that was that like a suggestion or recommendation, or was that a condition of approval?
Here are the minutes. We approved it unanimously with direction, I'm quoting now, with direction to staff to work with the developer to improve the landscaping and consider LID features. So that's what the minutes say.
So I do want to note that this is a communication and is intended to be lengthy back and forth. So I guess I just will report that the project has not come in for any external improvements yet for a building permit, and that was the condition trigger, is what we found out. Having said that, I'll reach out to my colleagues up on the Hill and ask them if they what their intentions are. We have some other issues that we want to discuss with them about the site as well, so that'll be a good opportunity.
And can you maybe bring back some more information for us just as an update in our next meeting?
Yeah, if I can get that resolved by the next meeting, I will definitely do that.
Okay. Any other correspondence from commissioners? How about correspondence from staff?
I just wanted to help promote the Home Away from Home potluck that Equity Arcata is hosting, which will be Sunday, March 9th, in a couple weeks here, from 5 to 6 p.m. It'll be at the D Street Community Center. There's information online that you can find about it, but the idea is you can basically bring any meal you wish to share with 10 to 15 other people, and the community gets together and welcomes Cal Poly students into the community. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you for that very much. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.